We are in the epistle of 2 John. We have come to we've come to verse 10. See if we can. We've come to verse 10. We'll let our PowerPoint get caught up with us. But that being said, we've overviewed the chapter as regards in truth, remain in the truth, recognize untruth. And then when we get to verse 10, we're talking about the idea of reject untruth. As of verse 9, John had just declared, he told the elect lady, his audience, and her children, who are also his audience, you look to yourselves that we lose not those things which we've wrought, but that we receive a full reward. Be careful. Keep your eyes open. Have your radar working so that we receive our reward. Don't lose sight of your faith. Don't lose sight of your walk with God. Don't lose sight of the reward, because indeed it can be lost. By the way, 2 John 8 is a rather uncomfortable passage for so many of our denominational friends who insist that a person cannot lose the reward. Verse 9, whosoever transgresseth, proago, goes beyond, goes progressive, and abides not in the doctrine of Christ hath not God. He that abideth in the doctrine of Christ hath both the Father and the Son. Whoever transgresses or progresses, this is the progressive mindset, and yes, John is dealing with the false teachers of his day that we call the Gnostics, the ones that claimed to have a knowledge that they had really invented for themselves, but claimed to have gotten it from a higher source. Those things being said, John, having given these warnings and having emphasized that those that go beyond, that transgress, that abandon, progress past the doctrine of Christ, they're not on God's side and God's not on theirs. If we want to be on God's team, so to speak, we have to stay in Christ's teaching. We come to verse 10. Keep in mind, John is writing to the elect lady, and whoever she is, wherever she is, however old she is, she's old enough to have children that are Christians, faithful children, and children that are not at her home, but that he encountered elsewhere. And he told her that he rejoiced to see that her children walked in truth. She's at least middle-aged, maybe older. She is a lady that is well known. John will say that speak of all those that love her in the truth. Those that know her love her. Those that love the truth love her. Now, verse 10. He tells this woman who's well beloved, who's known for having brought up faithful children, this woman who is such a prominent example of what a Christian lady can be. By the way, how often do we have ladies these that look at the elect lady of 2 John? They're usually just about Ruth or Esther, right? Here's a woman that's a shining example, and part of the shining example she needs to set is to stay away from the tarnish. Verse 10. If there come any unto your house, and bring not this doctrine, receive him not into your house, neither bid him Godspeed, for he that biddeth him Godspeed is partaker of his evil deeds. The word if is in a tense that it's not the subjunctive if, maybe, perhaps. It's more of the idea of when. When any come unto you, and bring not this doctrine. If is perhaps. When is definite. If, that's possible. But when is inevitable. John says when, because it's going to happen. When any come unto you and bring not this doctrine, receive him not into your house. Bring not this doctrine. What doctrine? Well, the doctrine of Christ. Not just the doctrine about Jesus' deity and his humanity. Not just the doctrine about him coming to earth. Not just the doctrine about his death and resurrection. This is all of the doctrine about Christ. This is the gospel message. If there come any unto you and bring not this doctrine, the word translated bring, the Greek word is Pharaoh, not Pharaoh, the old ruler of Egypt. This is Pharaoh. The idea being to bear, to carry. It's translated various ways in the New Testament, but it contains within it the idea of upholding something. John says, when any comes to you and he's not upholding this doctrine, he's not bearing this doctrine, he's bearing something, but it's not the doctrine of Christ. Receive him not into your house. Lovers of the truth cannot accept liars. And that's exactly what they are. John has already told this elect lady, I love you in the truth. And so do all those that have known the truth. I love you for the truth's sake. When he speaks of the truth, he's speaking of the gospel of Christ. The gospel system of faith. The standard by which God's people live. Here comes one that doesn't bring this doctrine. He doesn't bring the truth. Well, if he's not bringing the truth, what's he bringing? The opposite. So John tells this lady, who in reading 2 John, we can't help but assume that she has a sweet disposition. She's a kind lady and known for her kindness, a loving lady known for her love, a faithful lady known for her faithfulness. And John says you need to be a staunch lady also. Not stench, staunch. You need to be solid in truth. To the point that, receive him not into your house. A couple of questions here. What's meant by receive him into your house? It's very possible that this elect lady was one who was of such means that her house would provide accommodations for brethren to meet. In other words, the church could meet in her house. Paul would write to Philemon concerning the church that met in his house, various others. You read Romans 16 and there seem to be multiple congregations that meet in individuals' houses that are mentioned. When John says what he says here to the elect lady, if they're coming unto you and bring not this doctrine, receive him not into your house. If nothing else, we can guarantee that the teaching here refers to refusing to receive a teacher into the congregational setting and receive him in such a way as to give commendation, accommodation, and approval. God's people, lovers of the truth, cannot accept liars. Or maybe what's meant by receive him not into your house is really referring just to her house. And not receiving such a teacher into her house in such a way as so, again, to give approval. Keep in mind that in the first century, you couldn't find a Holiday Inn. Matter of fact, Motel 6 wasn't on every corner. And when brethren and alleged brethren traveled, they tended to rely on the hospitality of their brethren. By the way, repeatedly in the New Testament, hospitality is connected to the idea of love. You go to Romans 12, beginning in verse 9, let love be without dissimulation. Romans 12:10, let brotherly love Romans 12:10, be kindly affectioned one to another with brotherly love. Love, love, love. 3 verses later, distributing to the necessity of the saints, given to hospitality. Part of the love that Christians are to exhibit is to be given to hospitality. You take a glimpse at Hebrews 13, 1 and 2. Let brotherly love continue, and forget not to entertain strangers, for thereby some have entertained angels unawares. Hospitality. Love and hospitality go hand in hand, like peas and carrots. 1 Peter 4, 8 and 9. Peter exhorted the brethren to love one another and to use hospitality. Those things being said, here is the Apostle John writing after the time of the Hebrews writer, writing after the time when Paul wrote Romans 12, and writing after the time when Peter wrote 1 Peter 4, and John, writing in love to this well-beloved lady, tells her there are some folks that don't get your hospitality. Receive him not into your house. Well, wait a minute. What if it's sub-zero temperatures and he's going to freeze outside and die? That's not what's being discussed here. We're not talking about the exhibition of needed benevolence for a life. We're talking about the receiving of someone in a way such as to portray acceptance and approval. Things to keep in mind. Move forward in the verse. Verse 9. Receive him not into your house, verse 10 rather, receive him not into your house, neither bid him Godspeed. Don't accept him and don't approve of him. Neither bid him Godspeed. The phrase bid him Godspeed, the word bid is translated from the Greek word lego. It just means speak or to lay down the words. But the word translated Godspeed, that's an interesting one. This word is kairo, and it's derived from the Greek kara. Other forms of this word are translated joy, rejoice, cheer. Now, this word is frequently translated as greet and in other ways in the New Testament. Time will not allow us to survey all of those. But for our point tonight, the idea is not if there come one unto your house, receive him not into your house, and don't even say hello to him. No. Neither bid him Godspeed is saying, don't lay down your joy for him. Do not bestow joy to him. Essentially, do not say, be of good cheer. Do not wish him well. Do not bestow upon him a desire for success in his efforts. You ever get that knock on your door on Saturday mornings and it's those people that claim to witness Jehovah? Are you polite? We can be polite, can't we? Even if they're not, we can be polite. And hopefully they are too, and frequently they are. Sometimes they're not, but frequently they are. But we can be polite. But we certainly don't have to say, hey, I hope you find some folks to buy into your doctrine today. You all stay safe. Be careful. We can be polite. We can wish them well regarding the well-being of their lives, but not the well-being of their efforts. And that's the idea John's getting across here. The point John's making is not, listen, if there comes one unto your house and he's a false teacher and it's 28 degrees outside, you just tell him to freeze to death. No, that's not it. We got some brethren that would take that approach. John's point is, do not receive this person in such a way so as to bestow approval or commendation upon the efforts that he is conveying and exercising. Receive him not into your house, neither bid him Godspeed. Don't take joy in his efforts. Don't even make it appear that you're giving joy in his efforts. I've got these notes here, and I keep thinking they're notes from my Bible. I almost read you the announcements again, just looking at that page on the top here. Verse 11, he that biddeth him Godspeed. There's that phrase again. The lego and the kairo. He that lays down the joy, that wishes joy to him, that wishes him well, is a partaker of his evil deeds. Partaker. The word thus translated is koinoneo. Koinonia. Koinonos. The idea of in common. This koinoneo is also translated as half fellowship. Matter of fact, John used the same word back in 1 John chapter 1 when he said our fellowship was with the Father and with His Son Jesus Christ. If we say we have fellowship with Him and walk in darkness, we lie and do not the truth. 1 John 1:6. If we walk in the light as He is in the light, we have fellowship one with another. A soul cannot have fellowship with God and fellowship with error. I can't have fellowship with the false teachers and have true fellowship with God's people. We're not talking about a situation where here comes someone that's a new Christian that has a couple of misunderstandings regarding the nature of the church or a moral issue or some other nuance regarding the faith. We are talking about blatant, outright false teachers here. There are some brethren that have actually taken the position that unless you're a Christian, you can't sit at my table. Huh. You can guarantee they're not winning very many souls. John's point for this lady is much like what Paul had to say when he wrote to the Corinthians. 1 Corinthians 5, Paul said, I wrote unto you a letter not to company with fornicators and adulterers, but not the ones of the world. Otherwise you'd have to go out of the world. But if a brother be called a fornicator or adulterer, have no company with him. Well, this is someone who's a member of the church that John's describing, or at least claims to be, and has enough of a knowledge about Christ that he should be forfeiting these other ideas that he's propagating, but instead he's teaching his false doctrine and he refuses to let it go. Brethren, there are times when certain ideas and teachings may come from the mouth of a person who just didn't know any better, and we need to do like Aquila and Priscilla and take that fellow to the side, sit down and do some teaching. Acts 18, that's what they did with Apollos. Taught him the way of God more perfectly. They didn't tell Apollos, oh, you taught something wrong, get out of here. We're not talking about an Apollos situation here. We're talking about a situation where the teachers that have come, and it's still fascinating to me that in studying what John has to say, John never gives names to the false teachers in 1st or 2nd John. And he only mentions one troublemaker in 3rd John. His name is Diotrephes. Whoever these false teachers are, we know the form of their doctrine. They're not just people that have made a boo-boo. Not just people that have more room to learn. They are people that have decided not to learn. They are people that have decided to teach lies. What if there comes one unto this congregation, trying to visit with the brethren at Forest Hill, but he teaches error regarding what it means to obey the gospel? He teaches error regarding the unique nature of the Lord's church. Teaches error regarding the basics of worship. Can he worship with us? Can he sit in the pew? Can he sing praises as the rest of the congregation sings as well? Wait a minute, we've received him then, haven't we? Or if we put it in practical terms, do we get an idea of what Paul's describing? Brethren, if Billy Graham were still alive and he wanted to come sit in a worship service with him, I'd let him have the front pew. But he ain't getting the pulpit. And that's the difference. What John has to say pertains to allowing them to spread their false ideas. So, if there come one unto you and bring not this doctrine, receive him not into your house, neither bid him Godspeed. He that biddeth him Godspeed is partaker of his evil deeds. And you better believe that Mr. False Doctrine embellishing alleged brother is going to try to use any link, any reference to any sound individual in order to gain credence with the next congregation. False teachers love to claim fellowship with the people that are sound until they get so far off that they know they can't do it anymore, aka Rubel. False leaders always are looking for endorsements. And if they can go away saying, the elect lady allowed me in her home. They allow me to teach when the church met there. Well, that's an endorsement. And let there be no doubt, and this is not just for us, we need to remember this whenever we're talking about so many other issues that can arise among Christians today. The person that's willing to contort, twist, and embellish the gospel of Christ will not hesitate to contort, twist, and embellish a relationship with the faithful in order to get a step in the door of the next target. John's words to this elect lady are vital for congregations today. and remembering that our behavior and our treatment of certain people can indeed show endorsement. Suppose you've got a congregation that allows denominational speakers who teach contrary to Scripture on this topic or that topic. They allow them to come and speak to the congregation during the worship period, leading the Lord's church. Is that right? It's happening far too often. In some sobering circumstances. Receive him not into your house, neither bid him Godspeed. John didn't say shoot him. He didn't say let him freeze to death. What he's saying is do not give approval. Is this unloving? No. Remember how Paul said speaking the truth in love? Ephesians 4:15. And in that same penman's breath, Paul had said, we're not to be children tossed to and fro, carried about by every wind of doctrine, cunning craftiness, whereby they lie in wait to deceive with the sleight of men. Paul said we're to speak the truth in love at the same time as he said we need to be mature enough to recognize the frauds. Paul taught that to the Ephesians. That's John's point here. So, we go ahead and move forward. Lovers of the truth cannot accept liars. Lovers of the truth cannot approve liars. Picking up at verse 12. Having many things to write unto you, I would not write with paper and ink. Well, what you going to use, John? I trust to come unto you and to speak face to face. Let's look at the conclusion. Because John's desire pertaining to the elect lady is to be able to speak with her face to face. The literal translation would be mouth to mouth. We're not talking about the CPR, but in other words, in person. He says, I don't want to tell you with paper and ink. I want to tell you face to face. I trust to come unto you. The word translated trust, the word is elpizo. Most of the rest of the time it's used in the New Testament, it's translated as hope. We so often basically describe it as a desire with an expectation. Something that I look forward to happening that I also expect to happen. John hopes to be with her. I trust to be with you and to come unto you, speak face to face, that our joy, Kyra. This is a form of that same word translated Godspeed back up in verses 10 and 11. John says, I trust to come unto you and bid you Godspeed. I trust to come unto you, receive Godspeed from you. I trust to come unto you that our joy, our Kyra, may be full, filled up, complete. By the way, anytime you're reading John's writings, and you read something pertaining to perfection or full, or that your joy may be full, that's just another well-worded phrase to show the superiority over the truth of the gospel as compared to the Gnostic beliefs, because those Gnostics claimed to have a fullness of knowledge that their brethren didn't have, and to have reached a fullness of joy that the regular Christians couldn't achieve. John said, I just want to come be with you that our joy may be full. It's fascinating how often John combats false doctrine, not by trying to give the names or even the details of the doctrine, but just by preaching the truth. I want to come and see you. I want to be face to face. "2,000 years ago, John realized that there's some things that don't need to be said with a text message. And he was writing by inspiration. It might be a lesson for us. There are some things that just can't be conveyed as effectively in pen as they can in person. It takes effort to see people face to face. It takes effort to make a journey. It takes sacrifice. Sometimes we're not able because of other priorities that have to be in place. But in this instance with this lady, she was a priority, as she should have been for John. And he says, there's some things that I could tell you in pen, but I want to look you in the eyes as I say it. I wonder what those things were. We can only speculate. Could it have been something pertaining to the truth? If so, then it was something that we didn't need to hear. I wonder if it was something pertaining to a personal situation. Maybe something pertaining to her children and commendations for them. I wonder, could it have been something pertaining to her health or his? Keep in mind, this is the elder writing to the elect lady. We don't know. But the point is this. John, by inspiration, made it clear that there are some things that are better said face to face. And in our high-tech day today, where we send so many messages with just the punch of the fingers and we fail to talk to folks face to face, there's a lot that can be missing. The antisocial media, that's what we should call it, antisocial, right? There's something special about face to face. John closes his letter, "The children of thy elect sister greet thee." It appears that the elect lady's Christian sister, her elect sister, is there where John is, or not the elect lady's sister, but her children. These would be supposedly the nieces and nephews, family, and they say hello as well. In other words, here's a greeting from your sister and them. Just a cordial, casual hello. Because even in conveying the doctrinal truths that came to the uncomfortable point of saying, ma'am, there are some people you shouldn't let through the door, John still took the time to make sure that he was cordial and friendly and loving toward her. 2 John, for the truth's sake. Let's move into 3 John. Now, in talking about the epistle of 3 John, as we introduce it, when it comes to the authorship, the details that demonstrate the authorship of 3 John are really identical to the discussion of 2 John as it pertains to the long history of it being recognized as an inspired epistle from an apostle. That goes back to Cyprian of Carthage, Irenaeus, Clement of Alexandria. Also, looking at the vocabulary, the emphasis on truth in particular, the repeated emphasis on love and well-beloved are very much reflective of John's writings. This is distinct enough from 1 and 2 John that a fraud wouldn't have had those many distinctions, but it's close enough to 1 and 2 John that it's clear that this was coming from the same pen. So we take a look at just the evidence pertaining to the authorship of 3 John, and whoever wrote 3 John wrote 2 John, whoever wrote 2 John wrote 1 John, and whoever wrote 1 John wrote the gospel account of John, and we can tell who wrote the gospel account of John. Now, those things being said, in looking at 3 John, the audience, Gaius, the well-beloved Gaius, agapetos Gaius, agapetos, a form of agape, well-beloved. I love you because you're worth it, Gaius. Now, which Gaius? There are several Gaiuses mentioned in the New Testament. Which of these guys is it? Is it the one from Acts 19 that was a Gaius of Macedonia, Acts 19:29? Is it the Gaius of Acts 20, verse 4, who was of from Asia Minor? Is it the Derbe? Is it the Gaius from Romans 16:23 that Paul mentioned, who appears to have lived in Corinth? Is it the Gaius mentioned in 1 Corinthians 1:13 rather, when Paul said, I thank God that I baptized none of you but Crispus and Gaius? We don't know which of these Gaius guys it is, but there are several Gaiuses in the New Testament that are mentioned, and whomever this Gaius is, there's a strong possibility that it's one that's somehow connected to Ephesus, since that's where John seems to have been later in life. That said, The aim of this epistle, 3 John, verse 8, we therefore ought to receive such that we might be fellow helpers to the truth. We're going to give this the theme title, Fellow Helpers to the Truth. And that being said, a brief overview of this epistle. This epistle is really a study of 3 different reputations. We'll start with a salutation, but then we'll look at a fellow named Gaius. Gaius had a generous reputation. Then there's a fellow named Diotrephes. He had a greedy reputation. And then there's one more individual. His name is Demetrius. He had a good reputation. He has a good name among them that love the truth. A good name is rather to be chosen than great riches. Loving favor rather than silver and gold, Proverbs 20. 2 of these men had good names. And one of them had a name that I'd rather you call me Mud. From what we'll be studying about Diotrephes in a week or so. All of those things being said, John, in writing this epistle to the well-beloved Gaius and exhorting the well-beloved Gaius to continue to be faithful and loving and helping the brethren that travel, is going to identify error on the part of one named Diotrephes, one that refuses to receive the brethren, one that loves to have the preeminence. John didn't hesitate to make Diotrephes' reputation known in such a way that we still see it today. And there's some stern lessons to learn from this one as well. We'll stop there tonight. Thank you for your attention and for keeping your eyes open. And we'll pick up discussing Gaius next week.